Warner Brothers said in a regulatory filing that the waiver will allow it to have discussions with Paramount Skydance on its buyout offer and any potential modifications. The filing said that Netflix executed the waiver today. Warner Brothers now has until February 23rd to negotiate a possible transaction with Paramount Skydance. A gunman who opened fire at a Rhode Island youth hockey game yesterday, killing 2 adults and injuring 3 others, was stopped after a fellow spectator intervened. Pawtucket Police Chief Tina Gonzalez said that the shooter died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot. Gonzalez says investigators think the shooting at the arena was targeted and may have involved a family dispute. You're listening to Here and Now.
Cloudy, warm, and breezy with some rain on Thursday. It's your Radio IQ forecast. More clouds this afternoon and into the evening. A slight breeze. Temps in the upper 50s and mid-60s. Cloudy tonight will keep a slight breeze. Lows in the lower to upper 40s. Cloudy on Wednesday. Very small chance of a shower. Quite breezy and warm. Highs in the upper 50s. Trend 68 for Roanoke. And a better chance for showers Thursday, potentially with a couple rumbles of thunder. Highs in the upper 50s to near 68 for Danville. This is Radio IQ.
This is Radio IQ News Director David Seidel inviting you to discover Virginia on Demand. This free weekday podcast is a short collection of the day's news and featured stories from Radio IQ and our partners across the state. Hear the latest in politics, culture, and other highlights every morning before you get your day started. Listen to Virginia on Demand on our website, that's radioiq.org, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and your NPR station, and from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And Road Scholar, a nonprofit educational travel provider for adults, offering programs in more than 100 countries and online. Learn more at roadscholar.org/learning.
It's Here and Now. The jobs picture in this country picked up in January, and the unemployment rate down to 4.3%. But take a second and imagine the people in your life and mine hunting for work. 1 in 4 of them has been looking for half a year or more. That is high, and it's going up. So let's talk about what's called long-term unemployment with Robin Farzad. He's host of Full Disclosure. Hey, Robin.
Hey there.
What's going on? Why is it taking so many Americans, we know them personally, to find work?
We know so many personally, and you know the exasperation personally. I mean, we don't want to overstate, job losses in journalism and in public media and whatnot, but this is kind of everywhere. Something is going on at the gnarly intersection of AI disruption, kind of overshooting during the pandemic, the kind of the hiring boom and tech companies coming out of it, productivity gains, just kind of inflation and cutting at the margins, and that companies are taking ever longer. They're ghosting applicants. And it's just led to this period of learned helplessness. When you talk about 1 in 4 unemployed individuals have been looking for more than 6 months, that is not indicative of a 4 to 5% unemployment rate.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about what is happening with companies, with hiring. It doesn't seem like that long ago we were talking to you about all the Americans quitting their jobs. They could quit to find something better. What happened to that?
Can you remember there was remote work and hybrid work, and there were these standoffs that people didn't want to show up? I mean, can you imagine that we lived that? Look, everything was an overshoot. I sound like an old man when I say I remember that first week the pandemic broke, 6 years ago, that there were aerial shots of unemployment lines. When you have an unemployment rate shoot to 15, 16%, when you have companies just pulling the plug, failures happening, things that would typically take years to transpire happening in 2 weeks, that's clearly an overshoot. And the way the Fed and the markets and everybody responded to that was to fire first and ask questions later. And then money went to zero, and then everybody was hiring and overhiring. Mm-hmm. And you had this Big 7 boom, and you had this tech boom, and you had the NFTs and everything in this euphoria happen, and then the inflation. And so it's this constant reverberation back and forth, this overshooting and undershooting. And there's this feeling right now that we've been stuck kind of in this hangover, in this rut. And nobody knows kind of what's going to break us out of it, what's going to get companies out of their trigger shy period.
Well, which leaves, some of these workers looking for jobs in the situation they are, including younger workers. I mean, my adult kids been looking for jobs, internships, saying the hiring firms are so picky, so many rounds of interviews. How much of this is hitting entry-level workers?
It's brutal. I can tell you anecdotally, all the people are contacting us about their college graduate and 20-something age kids. This is the problem. The older the people are, the more they want to hang on for dear life to these jobs, the more they're going to downshift and take jobs that otherwise entry-level people, the fresh blood coming from colleges and trade schools and the others would take. And there's a kind of a generational tug of war. And companies, meanwhile, can sit back and say, we are the choosers here. We can set the terms. We can manage people out by mandating a return to the office. That might make it harder for some people. And unfortunately, it's hitting kind of the most idealistic and the most energetic and the people who are supposed to be at their peak earning years.
Robin Farzad is the host of the podcast Full Disclosure. Robin, thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
It's Here and Now.
It resonates with you. A story on Radio IQ that changed your perspective. A conversation that helped you understand the world better. And yes, the organizations that made it all possible. Corporate support isn't about shouting louder. It's about being present in the moments that matter to you. If your organization wants to make its mark where it counts, email us at corporatesupport@vt.edu.
Support for Radio IQ comes from Brogan Insurance, sponsor of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Also supporting the Sounds of the Mountains Storytelling Festival April 17th and 18th at Camp Bethel. Details at soundsofthemountains.org. And from Texture, modern-style custom furniture made in Roanoke, Virginia. Texture showrooms in Roanoke and Richmond showcase unique furniture and the stock bistro and bar. More information at txtur.com.
I think that most of the time, very few Americans are thinking about Cuba. But having said that, if President Trump were to bring down the communist government of Cuba without destroying Cuba along the way, I really think that that would be widely regarded around the world as kind of a historic triumph.
I'm Natalie Kitroev. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
Beginning at 6:30 on Radio IQ.
Funding for Here and Now comes from Olin College of Engineering. They believe human-centered designs make the most meaningful impact. At Olin, students learn to work in partnership with local communities with humility and empathy. Olin.edu. And City Space Productions, WBUR's creative studio for custom podcasts that tell a brand story to ignite engagement, reach new audiences, or enhance customer connections. WBUR.org/creative studio.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Peter O'Dowd in Phoenix.
I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C. This is Here and Now. Where do you go to find out about books, to find books? I mean, besides the bookstore. Well, my hometown paper, the Washington Post, has, as you may have heard, closed its book section. So I'm shopping around for online places to go and find my next book. And what do you know? Tracy Thomas is on the line to help. She is our go-to book conversationalist and host of the podcast, The Stacks. Hey, Tracy.
Hi, Scott.
So we know no news organization is forever. Your thoughts on the demise of the book section at the Washington Post?
Well, it makes me very sad. I'm a person who loves books and cares about books deeply, and it means it's one less place for people to find out about books. And I think more broadly, it is not great to see so many journalists lose their job, not just in the book section, but in so many sections across the paper.
A former reviewer at the Washington Post, Becca Rothfeld, wrote a piece about her job and the old section in the New Yorker, and she noted the Washington Post book section was not really for people who already know a lot about books and literature, but it's for new recruits. Do you see it that way?
I do. I think what is really interesting about this piece that she wrote that was fantastic is that she really calls out sort of the ways that we curate our own intake these days. You have an Instagram algorithm that's geared to the kinds of things you like, and you have streaming television, so you just pick the shows you want to watch. And with the newspaper, you are served what the teams at the newspaper think is valuable. So you might stumble across something that wasn't on your radar. You might discover a new book. You might discover that you like reading about books or reading about the sports team or whatever it is. And I thought that was a really beautiful point that she made, that not only are we losing books coverage, but we're losing a way to sort of engage with things outside of our normal purview.
And as Becca Rothfeld writes, there are kind of different places, I guess, for different kinds of readers. And I want to kind of ask you about the traditional sources still around. There's the New York Times, of course. NPR has a books team, Elle magazine. How do you think about the different places, how they're similar, how they're different?
So the New York Times, to me, still remains sort of this book standard. They have a podcast, they do great coverage, but I think the place that is so surprisingly great is Elle magazine. They still are taking books super seriously. It's not a place that people necessarily think of for books coverage, but they curate fantastic lists. They'll have a list, you know, if you like this show, check out these books. Into mystery, check this out. Plus, they interview authors, they connect books to pop culture. I think they're doing really great work, especially for people who are readers who maybe aren't, like, quote unquote into books.
Yeah. Elle magazine, and that's a little surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't be that. That is where this great section is.
Yeah, I'm every time I click on it, I sort of giggle to myself because a lot of publications have, like, you know, best books of the month or books from this quarter, and those lists are all the same 10 books. And then I click on Elle's list and I think, wow, no, this is a great list. Like, they really are doing surprisingly amazing work. Not surprisingly because the journalists aren't good there, but surprisingly because I don't think of Elle as a place for books.
Yeah. You have other suggestions of literary outlets for us, including LitHub. And I went there briefly and I loved the piece on, like, how novelists think about the 25th Amendment, how a president might be removed, or less political, literary history of the Muppet Show. Tell me more about LitHub.
Yes. So in Becca's piece, Becca Rothfeld's piece, she talks about how there are fantastic literary outlets, online magazines, spaces that are dedicated to books, which of course have wonderful readerships, but those are people who know they're into books. Those are people who are looking for book coverage. One of my favorite places is LitHub, as you mentioned. They do fantastic pieces. They do reviews, they do interviews, they do news. Sometimes they do these fun brackets. They did one like greatest villain of all time, you know, and they have you vote, and that's all really fun. They also talk about
like
book
March
covers.
Madness brackets?
Yes, a March Madness style bracket, but for villains. And then the other thing that they do, and this is my favorite thing, every Friday they have a newsletter called Bookmarks, and it's a little digest of the week. It tells you anything going on in the book world, book news wise. It tells you about book awards, anyone who's maybe passed away, and then it tells you the top 3 reviewed books in fiction and nonfiction from the week, and it aggregates them. So you can click on the book and see all the reviews that were written for each of those books. It is a dream.
Okay, Tracy, I have this bracket up of villains, and it's interesting. The final 4, Hannibal Lecter, Satan, Sauron, and O'Brien from 1984. Who do you think won?
Well, I know who won. Because I did vote. I participated in this bracket. It's O'Brien.
Okay, O'Brien won. Did you vote for O'Brien? I kind of loved the idea.
Okay, I got to tell you the truth. I've never read 1984. I know. You call me a book expert. I might be a fraud, but the truth is I've never read it. But I do love a good villain, and I do have a copy in my house, so I will read it, and I'll report back.
Which means you didn't vote for O'Brien. You probably voted for somebody else.
I probably voted for O'Brien because I just was voting for fun.
Okay. All right, let's talk about podcasts. You have one, The Stacks, of course, and we will suggest that to our listeners. But give me another one you wanna mention, you want us to take a listen to.
Okay, so one of my favorite podcasts, and this again is for people who maybe don't think of themselves as bookish people but like to read, is a podcast called Glamorous Trash. It is hosted by Chelsea Devantez, who has her own memoir, but the show is all about celebrity memoirs, and it is a blast. She takes them so seriously. She really considers the book artistically, what's being said, but also she ends every episode, talking about, was this book, did it add to my life? Did it deliver the juiciness that I wanted? And I think this is a fun place for people who maybe like reading, but also really like pop culture and want to know, should I actually pick up Spencer Pratt's new memoir? Do I care about the ups and downs of Will Smith's life? And Chelsea covers all these huge memoirs. She brings on guests, and it's really, really fun.
Well, I love the whole, what did it add or subtract from my own life? The reader.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's the important question. Yeah. Okay. I love that. So, Tracy, you also suggest Substacks. Who is on your list there?
Okay, so first I just want to highlight Ron Charles, famous critic at the Washington Post, just started or is taking up his own Substack. He started it a while ago, but now he's committed to it now that he has lost his job. So check that out if you're a Ron Charles fan, as I am. But there are two women who are writing awesome Substacks, and I'm going to highlight both of them. Fiction Matters is run by a woman named Sarah Hildreth. She's a former English teacher, and she is doing English teachery things. If you want to understand how to read better, if you want to, think about characters in different ways. Sometimes she does deep dive reads into a book. She posts reviews. It's really just nerdy perfection if you want to be back in school. And then another author that I adore, her name is Tembe Denton Hurst, and she's also a journalist. Her Substack is called Extracurricular, and she includes fantastic reviews. Her review of Miranda July's All Fours is an all-time great Substack read for me. But she also will take people out on book dates where she takes a bookish person to a bookstore and interviews them and shops for books with them. And that's what's so great about Substack. Fun. Yeah, people on Substack can do fun things you just can't do in a, legacy media situation. And so Substack is a great place if you want to get niche. There's a woman named Martha who pretty much only reads translated literature. And so there's something for everyone on Substack, and you really are supporting the work of creative people who are writing and putting out things into the world. So I subscribe to too many Substacks. I suggest people join me in that.
Yeah, me too. All right. Tracy's list includes, she just mentioned, Extracurricular and Fiction Matters. We're going to have Tracy's whole list on our website, hereandnow.org. Tracy, I got to ask, are you going to read 1984 at some point? We should talk.
I'll read it.
When you do.
I'll read it. Maybe that can be our book club this year.
I like it. Let's jot it down. Tracy Thomas is host of the Stacks podcast. Tracy, thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott.
And we will be covering the President's State of the Union address next week, and we want your thoughts. Is there an issue affecting your life that you want the President to mention? Well, you can go to hereandnow.org/State of the Union. Send us your thoughts. It's Here and Now.
Radio IQ's Chief Advancement Officer, Sally Logan Walker. We are a service of Virginia Tech, and the university's annual Giving Day goes from noon Wednesday to noon Thursday. During those 24 hours, any member of the Hokie Nation, whether you're an alum, student, employee, neighbor, or just a fan, is invited to donate to their favorite Virginia Tech cause. And we sure hope Radio IQ is one of them. Find out more on the website, givingday.vt.edu.
Over the last few years, Brazil has been conducting an experiment in how to get your democracy back after you elect an authoritarian. Are there lessons for the U.S.?
The first thing I would say is don't listen to people who tell you to stop talking about democracy, right? Don't do that.
That's next time on Today Explained.
Tune in for Today Explained, beginning at 7 on Radio IQ.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And Made In, makers of cookware found in restaurants around the world, offering a carbon steel non-stick griddle for home use, designed for use indoors or outdoors, on a grill or over an open flame. More at madeincookware.com.
It's here and now. The long stretch of sub-freezing temperatures along the East Coast created some of the best conditions in years for an obscure winter sport. NPR's Frank Langfit went ice boating with sailors on the Chesapeake Bay last week. And he's on the line now from Annapolis, Maryland. Frank, you're going to have to tell this guy from the desert what an ice boat is.
I really wasn't that sure myself, Peter. They're about the length of a kayak. They're polished wood. They're very pretty, and they have a single sail, and then they ride on what look like giant ice skate blades. And what really kind of distinguishes this boat is when you're sailing on smooth ice, the ride is practically frictionless. So even in light wind, these ice boats, they go really fast.
Oh, well, okay. So thankfully for most people on the East Coast, the temperatures have warmed back up. But man, it was cold for weeks
It was
in your
incredibly
area.
cold here. Yes.
Did that give ice boaters on the Chesapeake a chance they hadn't had in a while?
For these guys, this was heaven. They can be years when they don't have any chance to get out because the Chesapeake Bay in particular, it's brackish water. It doesn't freeze a lot. And so like if you live in Wisconsin or places like that, you have much more opportunity. So all these people headed out and they got about 13 days of really good ice, nearly 2 weeks. And these were some of the best conditions down here on the Chesapeake Bay that these guys said they'd ever seen.
Well, how thick was the ice? Because, of course, my first question is, are you sure?
It was mine, too, and I asked that question. I went to this place on Maryland's eastern shore. It's obscure. It's called Claiborne Cove, but one of the reasons that they like it is the ice is very smooth, but also it was about 8 inches thick, but more importantly, it's only a foot deep at low tide, 4 feet at high tide. So even if you went through the ice, it's going to be shocking, but it's not life-threatening.
Okay, so tell me more about this place you went and what you did.
When I went down there, what was really cool and I didn't expect is you had crowds of up to 100 people coming every day to watch. They'd heard it, people talking about it in town. And it's aesthetically, Peter, really beautiful. You have these ice boats. They glide along this very flat surface of the ice, and you can see the shadow of the sails moving along the ice. It's really, really lovely. And what was surprising to me is that the ice boaters were like really, really friendly, and they were just offering rides to anybody, basically trying to say, this is a rare opportunity. Come on out with us and enjoy. I met a guy named Ben Van Nest. He's an architectural designer out there on the Eastern Shore. And this is how he described the first time he went out on an ice boat.
When you were a kid, if you ever laid down on a skateboard and you just went downhill, it feels a lot like that. You're really, really close to the ice, and you hear every single scrape and scratch.
Wow.
And this is what it sounds like, Peter. Give a listen.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I mean, first of all, no, I never went down a skateboard down a hill on my stomach. Just for the record, because I'm not brave enough to do something like this. Frank, I see you're a sailor, right? So how does this compare, ice sailing? How does it compare to conventional sailing?
The thing that's really interesting is the basics are very similar. You catch the wind with a sail. On a regular sailboat, you have a wooden tiller usually, and you use that to turn the rudder and steer the boat. On an ice boat, you have another tiller, but it turns the front blade. And again, the big difference is the speed.
Well, how fast are we talking about?
Well, so if you're in a keel boat, one like a conventional sailboat on the Chesapeake Bay, at maybe you would be going 7-8 miles an hour on a good day. If you're doing in that same kind of wind on an ice boat, you're doing 25 or 30 miles an hour. And so you're talking about 3 or 3.5 times. Sometimes the ice boats, they can go 50 or 60 miles an hour. I went out last week with an ice boater named Michael Keene, and it's a single cockpit. There's not much room. And so I actually had to sit outside the cockpit, hold on to this wooden plank that holds up the mast. And because of the speed, you cannot wait for the last moment to turn like you could in a sailboat. And this is what it's like.
coming up to a dock, so definitely time to turn.
We're going to actually do attack this time. We're going to make way to windward here as best we can before we go around.
And the sail comes across the boat. We pick up the wind, and off we head straight out towards the Chesapeake Bay.
Frank, I'm sitting here cringing. I'm worried about your safety. I mean, do these things crash? How does that work?
Yes, they can, especially at high speeds. I talked to a guy down there on the cove. He had crashed his boat when it was going 35 or 40. He put his foot out because he was about to hit the rocks on the shore.
Oh.
He broke his ankle. I know. Talked to another guy, and he described one of his crashes where he and another guy hit each other head on at 40 miles an hour. And the other guy's boat, because it's made of wood, it just disintegrated. But they walked away from it.
But it's fun, right?
Oh, it is so much fun. And the thing that was great is that this was light wind. This was like 7-8 miles an hour of wind. So it was very manageable. I actually sailed one of the boats briefly, and it was quite easy. And it's a lot of fun. And everybody who got on one of these boats got off and they were just like, this is really exciting, really different, really unusual.
All right, NPR's Frank Langfent went out on an ice boat on the Chesapeake Bay, lived to tell about it. Frank, I see a new Olympic sport on the horizon here. Nice to speak with you.
Peter, happy to do it.
Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Peter O'Dowd.
And I'm Scott Tong. It's Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from Loomis Sales, committed to helping institutional and individual investors achieve their financial objectives, combining in-house research and risk management to create tailored investment strategies for every client. More at loomissales.com.
More and more Radio IQ and WVTF Music donors, age 70 and up, have used qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs, to support us. This popular option allows donors to exclude charitable contributions from their taxable income while still meeting the required minimum distribution from their IRA. If you have yet to take the required minimum distribution from your IRA, ask your broker if a QCD to WVTF and Radio IQ is right for you. Thanks in advance for your support.
I'm Radio IQ News Director David Seidel, inviting you to discover Virginia on Demand, a weekday podcast from Radio IQ with news and featured stories from our newsroom and contributors. Subscribe to Virginia on Demand wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISE FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
Fresh Air with Terry Gross is underwritten by the Davis H. Elliott Company, providing engineering and technical services to industrial partners since 1946. The Davis H. Elliott Company.
From WHYY in Philadelphia, I'm Terry Gross with Fresh Air. Today, photojournalist Lubna Marai grew up in Syria in a wealthy but abusive home. Her father was part of the al-Assad regime. She joined the Syrian revolution. At her first protest, security forces started shooting into the crowd. She found shelter inside.
I look out from the window and I see more people were being dragged to safety, and there was like streaks of blood on the pavement underneath. I knew my life was not going to.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 2 o'clock p.m. session of the Roanoke City Council on February 17th, 2026. City Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video streamed through YouTube Live at youtube.com/RoanokeVA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. I'm going to ask our clerk, Ms. McCoy, to please call the roll.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Volleson.
Here.
Ms. Powers. Here. Mr. Hagan.
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Here. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Here.
Mayor Cobb.
Here. And a quorum is present. Thank you all for being here. This afternoon, our invocation will be led by the Reverend Terry Kemp, Children's Pastor and Ministries Director, Fort Chiswell Church of God. Then I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And Reverend Kemp, if you'll come on up, before you offer your invocation, I'm going to ask that we pause for a moment of silence. So if you would please stand. So I'd like for us to hold a moment of silence in honor and in memory of Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you for this beautiful February day and the abundant blessings you give each of us. We thank you for the opportunity to live and serve in this great city, and for the abilities you've given each of us to make a lasting impression on its present and its future. We ask for your blessings on each member of council and our city leaders and their responsibilities to represent all citizens of this city in a professional and impartial manner. We pray for wisdom and vision in our endeavors to put forth our best efforts for the benefit of this community. Let us acknowledge the significance of each viewpoint expressed here today, that we may partner together in our efforts to achieve success in all of our resolutions. We pray for your divine inspiration for decisions made and actions to be taken in the days to come. Almighty God, inspire us to even greater accomplishments as the city of Roanoke continues to be a leading example of civic progress and partnership. May each of us approach our daily responsibilities with integrity, honor, and a desire for excellence. We also pray for our nation to not be divided, but united in our continual pursuit for community excellence and progress. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Reverend Kemp. A couple of announcements as we begin our meeting this afternoon. The City Clerk's Office is accepting applications for 2 upcoming vacancies on the Roanoke City School Board for 3-year terms of office expiring on June 30th, 2026. 3-year terms of office will commence July 1st, 26 and end on June 30th, 2029. Incumbent school board trustees are Christopher T. Link and Elizabeth C.S. Jameson, who is not eligible for reappointment. Application and information describing the duties and responsibilities of trustees of the Roanoke City School Board are available on the City of Roanoke's webpage at roanokeva.gov, or may be obtained by contacting the City Clerk's Office here in the Noel C. Taylor Municipal Building on this floor between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m. The deadline to receive applications is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026 at 5 p.m. For questions or additional information, you can contact the City Clerk's Office at 540-853-2541 or by emailing clerk@roanokeva.gov. At this time, as we begin our presentations and acknowledgments, as we often do at our 2:00 p.m. sessions, I'm going to turn to my colleagues on council for an opportunity to give shout outs. These are opportunities for us to celebrate and acknowledge special things happening in the life of our community between our meetings. So I will start with Councilwoman Powers.
Yes, my shout out is to TAP. I had the opportunity on the 12th to attend the Black History Celebration, where they honored Fed Up, Ladies of Vision, and Humble Hustle for all the wonderful work that these 3 organizations do every day, every year for our community. So I just want to say congratulations to these 3 organizations for the wonderful work that they do.
My council shout out is for Angels of Assisi. I got to do their ribbon cutting this week, and it was great to see this facility finally finished and able to serve the community. And it's been upgraded in a lot of ways, especially its medical facilities. So it's a great new facility and also a great service for our city. So thank you to the Angels for your hard work.
I'm going to piggyback off of Councilwoman Powers about attending the TAP Black History Celebration. It was a really great turnout. We had some great performers. I mean, from spoken word to dance performances. It was just an awesome event. And I also attended Angels of Assisi's ribbon cutting and saw some of the cutest dogs. And I'm like, I'm about to take some home. I was like, I gotta get out of here. But that was a really good event as well. And if you have it in your heart and in your pockets, please remember to adopt an animal that is in need of a loving home. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to give a shout out to the Roanoke neighborhood advocates and everyone that participated in the neighborhood awards last Thursday. Several of us were there and had a great time, and want to congratulate all of the neighborhood organizations that won awards, and just thank you for your continued investment of your time in your neighborhoods. And also, it's great to see so many neighborhoods reaching out and helping rebuild and restart some groups that fell off over COVID and a little, maybe some before that. But I just think that's such an important part of our landscape here in Roanoke is our really strong neighborhood groups. So thank you to everyone who participates in that.
One of my shout outs goes out to Angels of Assisi. I know that we had been waiting for a long time to get this new facility, and I'm just happy for their work and for their new installations.
I echo a lot of what's already been said because that's the challenge of going last or near last. Shout out to TAP for their celebration. It was absolutely amazing. I was happy to be able to join.
Thank you all. A couple for me. I intended to do this at our last meeting, but just didn't remember to do it. I think everyone's aware that a couple of weeks ago, 4 of our firefighters were involved in a very surprise fire, and all received injuries, some more significantly than others, but all were injured. I wanted to just give the 4 of them a shout out to let them know we're thinking about them, that we're praying for continued healing and strength, and for their families. All of them are now home and recovering, and so that's really good news. And I was also able to participate in the ribbon cutting for Star City Golf Club, which is right off Carver Avenue off Williamson Road. Whether you love golf or not, it's a great place to go to work out some stress, to hang out with friends, to play some of the greatest holes of golf. They have like 2,000 courses they can draw from. I tried to get rid of my slice that day, and that did not work. So that requires a little more practice, but a shout out to them. So at this time, I'm pleased to ask Councilman Nash to go to the podium and greet Charles and Anita Price and anyone else that may be here from the Harrison Museum of African American Culture for the presentation of a proclamation declaring February 2026 as Black History Month. What's your name again?
Whereas 2026 marks the centennial observance of Black History Month, a time to honor and reflect on the achievements, struggles, and enduring contributions of African Americans to our nation, our Commonwealth, and the city of Roanoke. Whereas the Harrison Museum of African American Culture stands as a refuge where members of the Black and African American community can see themselves, their heritage, and their history preserved, affirming identity, inspiring pride, and strengthening connections across generations. Whereas for nearly 40 years, the museum has cultivated awareness and appreciation for the significant contributions of people of African descent, ensuring that a more complete and inclusive history of the Roanoke Valley is told and preserved. Whereas the museum's permanent collection includes memorabilia, photographs, artifacts, oral histories shared by elders, and African and contemporary art collectively documenting the culture, resilience, and legacy of Black communities throughout the Roanoke Valley. Whereas the Harrison Museum sponsors community centered cultural events, including the annual Henry Street Heritage Festival, and collaborates with local organizations to inspire the youth, promote cultural diversity, and provide a vibrant arts and research venue for our region. Whereas the museum's recent relocation to the Melrose Plaza represents a meaningful investment in cultural preservation and neighborhood revitalization, creating a welcoming and contemporary space for expanded exhibits, educational programmings, and community connection as it enters its next chapter of service. And now, therefore, I, Councilman Fajon Nash, with the support of Mayor Joseph L. Cobb, the mayor of the city of Roanoke, hereby proclaim the month of February throughout this great 8-time All-American city as Black History Month, and therefore further recognize and commend the Harrison Museum of African American Culture for its preserving, educating, and celebrating African American history and culture, and for its leadership and community impact here in the city of Roanoke.
Thank you so very much, Councilman Faison. And to all of you, I want to say, first of all, on behalf of the museum, I want to say thank you so very much for your support. About an hour ago, our executive director, E.B. Smith, called and said, I can't come in. And anyway, he's feeling under the weather, and he sends his remarks as well as saying thank you. I want to also invite all of you, and Mayor Cobb has already been down to one of our events. We are showing Oscar Michaud movies every Friday, 5:30. We have this Friday and next Friday, so I invite you all and everybody here. And by all means, come see our beautiful museum. For the many years that you have given us your support, we thank you kindly. And if I don't shut up, Mr. Price is going to pull my coattail. Thank you, darling.
Thank you all.
Bless you.
Thanks a lot, man.
I want to get a picture with
Okay.
Ms. Price.
Come on up. Charles, you want to open the proclamation up? Show it off.
Left or right, but I can't see you at all. Perfect. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. I did have the chance last Friday to go and see one of Oscar Michaud's films called Birthright. It's about an hour and 10 minutes, and it was made in 1938. It's really remarkable. It's an incredible reflection of Jim Crow era, the story of a man who's received education, has put down money to buy a property, and is swindled by a property owner, and it kind of tells the story of how he worked through all of that process. In some ways, it has a happy ending, and in other ways, it just reflects that history sometimes repeats itself and the challenges that we face. So it's well worth seeing some of these early films by Oscar Michaud. We turn now to our hearing of citizens upon public matters, and this is a time that we set aside in our meetings to hear from citizens. All matters will be referred to the city manager for response, recommendation, or report to the council as she may deem appropriate. For citizens speaking today, for those for whom this may be your first time here, if you come up to the podium, if you could just lift that mic a little bit, whoever the first speaker is. There's a box in the upper right-hand corner that has 3 lights, green, yellow, and red. Green means go, yellow means you have a minute left, and red means wrap it up. And I believe, how many speakers do we have today?
I have 4 speakers.
Okay, so everybody will have 3 minutes each, which is typical for us. So again, green light, go, yellow is a minute left, and red is stop. And if you're, mid-sentence, mid-thought, I'll work with you to finish up. So I'm going to ask our clerk to call 2 speakers at a time. And when your name is called, just come up and we welcome you today.
First 2 speakers, Anita James Price and Reiner Nash.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon. Welcome, Ms. Price.
Hello, everyone. I'll be honest, I hadn't planned on doing this. Oh, first of all, I do want to acknowledge my friend Tim Spencer, and congratulations on your retirement. And congratulations to our new city attorney, to Laura Carini. I struggled coming down here. I'm so happy that, to be here to represent the Harrison Museum. But some of you, a few of you, very few, remember that there was a time when I came down here as the, as the president of Roanoke Education Association to plead for our school system in support of our teachers, our school staff, and most importantly, our babies. So as I was coming down here and I told Charles, I said, I feel so conflicted. But then again, I felt moved that I just didn't feel right coming in here and not saying something that's on my heart. We're at a catch-22. Most of you know I spent over 35 years with Roanoke City Schools, and like I said, represented our schools as the president of the association. But then I also spent 13 years with council. I'm conflicted. I understand both sides of the issue. But at the same time, I would be remiss if I did not come before you and just say a few words. Before I got on council, there was always a dilemma as to how do we pay collective revenue for our school system. So we celebrated when the formula was finally put to 40%. That was a day of recognition that, hey, great. So I am saddened and distraught that now we've come to this impasse. So I guess what I want to say is my plea, my prayer, and having taught conflict resolution in our schools, I want to see City Council and Roanoke City Schools come back together. I will say the time that I served on council was some of the best relationships we had with those 2 entities. And I see my time's almost up. So like I said, I understand that this is an impasse. But my encouragement is to not just you, on the other side as well, to the school system. We've got to resolve this and we've got to figure it out together. And I gotta leave, give me just 2 seconds.
All right.
You know I can't sit down without saying my favorite quote from Frederick Douglass. It is easier, and I always say cheaper, to raise strong children than to repair broken men. So I thank you all again for your ongoing support, and God bless each of you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Welcome, Ms. Nash.
Good afternoon. My name is Reiner Nash, and I've been a teacher at Roanoke City Public Schools at James Madison since 2018. I'm here today to express my dissatisfaction with the proposed budget. I will not pretend to understand the nuances of the $20 million rainy fund. However, from my understanding, Roanoke City Public Schools save this money over a period of years, as we all do, and the city is entitled to that funding. Furthermore, to add salt in the wound, the City Council is proposing an additional 6% decrease of city revenue going to the schools. At the end of the decision-making process, the children will be the ones who are affected by these cuts in real time. It's the people on the front lines of education: teachers, admin, librarians, reading specialists, secretaries, bookkeepers, IAs, tutors, and maintenance teams, just to name a few, that will be negatively impacted, not the members on the council. As the VDOE is raising the standards for school accreditation for the 26-27 school year, Roanoke City is cutting funding. Higher expectations with less money. These two things cannot coexist. We are in a literacy crisis as a nation. The state of Virginia has responded to this literacy crisis with the Virginia Literacy Act now extending K-8. In my classroom alone, where I serve 93 students, 41 students are required to have a reading plan due to not passing their 5th grade reading SOL. In other words, 44% of my students do not read on grade level. Less funding will ultimately mean more students in the classroom, which certainly will not increase the number of on-grade level readers. Not to mention, with the new budget cuts, NWEA map testing is now on the chopping block. As a teacher, this program allows me to identify students struggling, plan individual intervention, and most importantly, share with students their personal growth in reading. Yet another thing taken directly from students and teachers. Lastly, I know this council is not responsible for deciding how the $16 million deficit is made up. However, that does not relieve the council of bearing some of the responsibility. It has been said that Roanoke City Public Schools seems to be cutting programs that, quote, pull at the heartstrings of the community. I would argue it would be very difficult to choose programs that are built and designed to serve children that did not pull at heartstrings. These cuts will further perpetuate an equity issue across the city. At Madison alone, we have 41.9% of our students identified as economically disadvantaged. These are the students who will feel these budget cuts the most. The students who no longer get to participate in any extracurricular activities or sports programs, further putting them at a disadvantage. I have reached out to every single one of you via email to advocate for my students. Due to lack of response from any member of council, I felt I needed to leave my paid teaching position to come and speak to you face to face. These decisions affect me and my colleagues, but ultimately it impacts the students the most. Education is the foundation of success, and funding is an imperative component to that success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Nash.
The next speakers, John Turnbull and Barbara Dirk.
Welcome, Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is John Turnbull, and I work at James Madison Middle School, teaching 7th grade math, algebra, and I coach wrestling as well. I'm here today to voice my disdain for the actions taken by this council to take the $20.5 million rainy day fund from Roanoke City Public Schools. The deficit facing our school system is close to $16 million, less than the $20.5 million the city has taken from the school system. Yet our mayor has said it feels like they've pinpointed things that pull at the heartstrings of people. Here's the problem with that statement. When it comes to caring for and educating the most vulnerable residents of our city, no matter what is cut, heartstrings are going to be pulled. I have had the privilege to coach wrestling each of my 5 years at James Madison. It is the part of my job that brings me the most joy, because I get to watch young people discover something new. The best part of this is the opportunity our school district has afforded our students by providing transportation after practice, allowing students who would otherwise not have a way to get home after practice the ability to participate. In Roanoke City, 61.7% of our students are classified as economically disadvantaged. At James Madison, 41.9% of our students are economically disadvantaged. This year on our wrestling team, we had 22 of 39 wrestlers who relied on the activity bus to take them home from practice. I care about equity and giving all of our students the opportunity to participate in after-school activities. Now, the activity bus is one of the many things being cut by our school district because of the funding that was pulled. This is one thing that pulls at my heartstrings. It can be tough to motivate students in the classroom. It's a lot easier when students are excited to go to school because they get to stay for art club, basketball, gardening club, tennis, Dungeons and Dragons club, cross country, Harry Potter club, soccer, history bowl, and much more. The decision to take the rainy day fund is negatively affecting our economically disadvantaged students by making it more difficult for parents and guardians to coordinate transportation easily. But that's just one thing that Mayor Cobb would say the district is using to pull at heartstrings. The district has planned to cut many programs to help offset the deficit. However, after pulling the programs that tug at the heartstrings, such as Play-Doh, preschool programs, reductions to the athletic budget, and many more, that amounts to just over $4 million. To pretend that the district is strategically pulling programs would be laughable if it did not directly impact our students. The biggest impact will be the 150 central office and school-based employees whose jobs are on the line. Many of our schools are already bursting at the seams. Our buildings are now facing the likelihood of having the same amount of students or more with less teachers and building staff. I understand that there is more to funding and running a city than just the schools, but right now we are taking the steps in the wrong direction. We are taking money away from our future and prioritizing other things. I am not aware of the intricacies of a city budget, but I do know that our students expect to see their teachers at school each day. It is unfortunate that the actions of this council have made it so that they will not see many of us next year. That pulls at my heartstrings.
Thank you, Ms. Trimble. Welcome, Ms. Dirk.
Good morning, Mayor and members of City Council. I am Barbara Dirk, Connect Now, and I'm working to connect our city, our Commonwealth on-road and off-road trails. I am a warm weather cyclist, but during the 10-degree ice-covered roads, I saw people commuting to work. So people are using their bicycles for transportation. I'd like to share with you two opportunities on how to get people to get involved. One is this QR code, and this QR code will take people to a community input opportunities for Evans Spring, for the zoning, and for the comments about the vape and tobacco stores. So make sure that you have used the QR code. Another is that tonight at 12 midnight is crossover with the General Assembly, and I am supporting the 2026 Omnibus Bicycle Safety Bill, and hopefully Roanoke City residents will do this too. Roanoke City supports Vision Zero and Complete Streets, and I think this is something that would benefit the citizens of Roanoke. Bike racks. When you have a bicycle, you need a place to park it. And when we are getting more parking in our commercial areas, but you can also get a bike rack for your business. And these are by application to the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission, that the deadline is March the 15th, 2026. And we'd love to have people that would like to have a free bike rack to make application. Thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you out on your bike.
Thank you, Ms. Dirk. Those are all our speakers. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to be with us today. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by members of City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of the items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. I will note that item number 4 on the closed meetings is being pulled, so that will not be part of the consent agenda today. But there are 5 requests for closed meetings. The first is to consult with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. Second is to discuss or consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, or of the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. Item 3 is to consult with legal counsel regarding a certain legal matter, requiring the provision of legal advice by the city attorney concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the northwest part of the city. Item 5 is to consult with legal counsel regarding the sale of city property in the northwest part of the city pursuant to Section 2.2-3711. And lastly, to consult with in-house and outside legal counsel regarding proposed new legislation requiring the provision of legal advice. That is all of our closed meetings that are part of the consent agenda, so I will ask for a motion and second to approve the consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Council Members Volleson and Powers. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Nash. Aye. Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan. Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire. And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the consent agenda is approved. We'll move now to our regular agenda. We have no public hearings today or petitions and communications, so we'll move to reports of city officers and the city manager. And we have one briefing today. I will note that the budget update is actually scheduled for March 2nd, not today. So I just want to make a note of that. And council members also have meetings coming up with budget and management team for further study of the budget. So that will occur on March 2nd during our 9 a.m. meeting. But we do have a briefing today, and that is the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan update, and I'll turn to our city manager to introduce that briefing.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Welcome Public Works Director Russ Campbell to the podium. Mr. Campbell will introduce our guests who will present the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan update.
Welcome, Mr. Campbell.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to introduce Amanda McGee, who is the Director of Community Development for the Regional Commission here today to brief us on the Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is an update that occurs every 5 years in collaboration with our regional localities and is eventually adopted by the governing body of each locality. So today we are presenting the plan. It is included, all 160 pages of it in your council packet. I know you're going to need time to review that. And so we will not be seeking adoption of the plan today, but we'll come back on the 2nd of March for formal adoption of the plan. So Amanda will present the inner workings of the plan. I also have with me our stormwater team and representatives from emergency management who were instrumental in providing the city's priority as this plan was developed with our surrounding localities, particularly our priorities of floodplain data and floodplain management and our critical facilities. And so with that introduction, I'll turn the time over to Amanda McGee.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of council, for having me today. And thank you also for the kind introduction. So here we are. So I'm here to talk to you about your hazard mitigation plan. This is a regional document. And so it covers the region that you see on the slide here, including all the way up to Allegheny County and then the Roanoke Valley. So this is multiple partners were involved in this plan. It was a 49-person steering committee. Multiple jurisdictions are adopting, and you can see them listed here. That does include, that's new this time, the Western Virginia Water Authority and the Roanoke Valley Resource Authority as adopting jurisdictions. So that's something different from previous hazard mitigation plans, so I wanted to point it out. This is a federally required plan. It enables certain funding pots, but it is also a required document. So other organizations that were involved in putting this plan together include the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, NOAA, and the Virginia Department of Forestry. So we did have participation from state and federal employees in this planning process. So here's a general timeline. This is a quite aggressive timeline for this kind of plan, and the reason for that is because your previous hazard mitigation plan is currently expired. That is for the whole region, and it expired in September, right about the time that we got to collectively experience Hurricane Helene as the Appalachian region. So in order to apply for HMGP or Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funding that was released in association with that disaster, you do need to have a plan in place. And so that is one of the reasons that we have pursued a very aggressive timeline. The city, along with several other localities in the region, have applied for those funds. So you do have to have the plan in place at the time when the determination for the funds, the award is made, which we are expecting sometime in the next couple of months. And you'll see on here that FEMA has already reviewed and approved the plan, and that is required before it comes to you for adoption, that FEMA reviews and approves and makes sure that it has met with their policy guidance. So what's in the plan? There are 7 chapters in the main body of the plan. The first 2 are kind of just general orientation chapters to the process, the planning process, and the planning region. A lot of the data and the history of disaster events in the planning region is in chapters 3 and 4. And also the projected risk from disaster events is located in chapter 4. Capabilities assessments are broken out by jurisdiction in chapter 5. Mitigation goals and strategies is regional, and then your specific action plans over the next 5 years are included in chapter 7. So for those who are interested specifically in the city sections of the plan, that's where you're going to see it broken out more. There's also multiple appendices. I won't list everything in here, but just to let you know, this is a very robust planning process. The plan document itself is quite long, but the total with appendices is over 800 pages. So if you are really curious, you could spend a long time here. So in terms of what was assessed in the plan, we did assess these hazards. Earthquake, extreme temperature. Extreme temperature does include both extreme cold and extreme heat. You also note geologic hazards includes karst and landslide. These were combined because of limited data for the model, so we have to meet a certain level of. So, Mr. Hagan, did you have?
Pardon my ignorance, but what is a karst?
Karst, yes, it's sinkholes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for that question. That's very helpful. I forget sometimes the things that I have learned in this process. So, but yeah, so we combined these items, these hazards, specifically because there was not enough data to fully flesh out the model for these issues, but they are issues for our region. So that allowed us to include them and potentially apply for funding under those hazards. So the other thing to note here, hurricane and tropical storm were assessed under flooding and wind events. So you won't see that, you'll see it in the history, but not in the risk model assessment. Another question that has come up in other presentations, what was not assessed in this plan? In our region, of course, we did experience the COVID-19 pandemic. That is mentioned in the plan, but was not assessed as a hazard. Drought is not assessed in this plan, and that is because there is a state mandated process to assess drought. The regional water supply planning is currently underway, and that is mandated by the state. So, and then we did not assess what I would call like security related hazards. So bad actors, we did not assess those kinds of events. This is a natural disaster focused plan. In terms of public engagement, we did a lot of outreach around this document early in the process. So there was a public survey that was online through March of, that would be 2025. We did receive 251 responses. We also did a lot of outreach to stakeholder groups to have some kind of one-on-one conversations with different groups that are already actively working in the region. So you can see that list here, but a diverse array of groups. And then we had some one-on-one conversations with CHIP and the Rescue Mission and some other kind of more discrete nonprofits that were interested in further discussion. And then So some results from the public survey. We saw that flood was the thing that was most experienced in the region. That was not surprising to anyone on the committee, and I don't believe it would be a surprise to anyone in the room. Flooding remains an issue that affects a wide variety of folks. Winter weather is the second most commonly experienced hazard from the survey responses, followed by wind. In terms of hazards folks were most concerned about, I want to note that this table is almost reversed. So your yellow and green are actually the high concern. In terms of that, what we saw again was that flood was what most people were concerned about, followed by winter weather and wind. And then we also had some concern around extreme temperature and wildfire that I think is worth noting. And so the outcomes of all of the data and analysis can be summarized best in this table. So of all the tables in the plan, this is the one that I have brought for you. The city of Roanoke mostly falls in with the rest of the region. There are a couple places where you're coming out a little bit different. The extreme temperature score for you was higher. Those to do with a couple of things. First, you have higher rates of social vulnerability in the city of Roanoke compared to some of our other localities. So that is in particular of concern with temperature. And then also you have some of the best data around extreme temperatures as well. In terms of, on the other hand, your wind event comes in as medium versus high across the region, and that was largely to do with the damage estimates. And also you have a lower ratio of mobile home parks, which are, those are specifically quite vulnerable to wind events. So overall for the region, wind events is high. That is an emerging issue across Virginia, and it's where we saw some of the bigger fatality numbers actually in the last 5 years for our region. Yes.
I was surprised that wildfires were rated as low. I mean, that's a fear of mine. I mean, we see a lot what happens in like California,
Yeah.
Canada. I mean, a big fire in Canada and it messes up the air quality here, and it's like, whoa, that's like catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious as to why it's so low. And I would think, looking at our mountains and the foliage that's laying on the ground up there, you know, why it's low or how that's graded or assessed.
Yes. So the wildfire was assessed through a model that was given to us by BDOF. So in the case of the city, the actual bounds of the city are not directly exposed to kind of that urban, rural, like urban wildlands interface that's really key for assessing risk to wildfire. We did not look at air quality impacts, and that's actually referenced in the plan as an area where we could consider some improvements in what kinds of data we're looking at in the model, because that does very much change some of the vulnerabilities, right? But in terms of actual what the data that we were looking at with this model, we're looking specifically at kind of the number of homes at direct risk. So looking at places where people have built homes up against national forests or up against national parks, that's going to drive that wildfire risk higher. And so they look at a variety of factors, but in this case, you're specifically looking at a certain type of fire event. So fire getting over a certain temperature or above a certain kind of height from the ground, and in terms of how severe it can get. So that's why the city is ranked low, and overall the region is ranked low. You'll note for wildfire, the highest risk is in Allegheny County, Clifton Forge, and Iron Gate. They have the most kind of ratio of their residents who are exposed. And then Roanoke County, it follows. And part of that is because Roanoke County takes on a lot of fiscal burden with regards to wildfire response for some of the surrounding localities. So, yeah. I apologize. Any other questions on that slide before I move on? So the regional goals and strategies are shown here. So we have 3 goals that were identified in the planning process, and then strategies are organized by hazard and consider 5 areas of work, which are local plans and regulations, structure and infrastructure projects, natural systems and nature-based solutions, and education and awareness and community safety. So there's the strategies are very long. There's a lot of them, so I hesitate to go into more depth than that. But if you're interested, that is chapter 6 of the plan. And then specific to the city, this is kind of a summary of what is present in your capabilities assessment. So we did look at the ratio of federal revenue for all of our jurisdictions. And that was provided by, that was looking at the state data on your budget. So it was determined based off of that data source. The name is totally escaping me at the moment, but it is the state audit office. And then a lot of your work is focused on flooding and flood mitigation. You have the advantage of having a stormwater fund, which helps offset some of that work, which is very good news. But you do have a fair amount of vulnerability to flooding. You have 797 claims paid out in the community since 1981, which is a total of $18,852,734 according to the FEMA data set. 85 repetitive loss structures and 11 severe repetitive loss structures. So definitely some work that can be done there. You are a CRS locality, which is the community rating system that does allow your residents a reduced flood insurance option. And this plan does serve as your CRS plan, so that will hopefully continue to be the case. And then in terms of specific impacts from high hazard potential dams, you are at risk from the Spring Hollow Reservoir Dam and the Carbons Cove Reservoir Dam specifically, and then 2 other small private dams are designated as high hazard, which are Windsor Lake and Spring Lake. And we did have to collect all of that data in order to enable some high hazard potential dam funding. And then this is our last slide of note here. So thank you for bearing with me. So your projects list begins on page 742. Most of your projects are flooding related, but you do have some projects that address extreme temperature and other hazards. If you have questions about those projects, I encourage you to reach out to your staff. I am mostly the scribe in this case, and this has been very much developed by your staff. So some great projects though, and you have a wonderful staff to work with. So thank you. And that is all I have for you today.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Other questions from council? Comment, Paulson?
Ms. McGee, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and for your work on this. As you said, it's a lot to look at, a lot to analyze. And so we're grateful for everybody's work on this so that hopefully when the next lien comes, we're prepared for it.
Yes, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. McGee, for the presentation. I did not have a chance to look through this entire document before coming down today, but I definitely will. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments in addition to thanking you and all of the team for your work. It's an honor. I serve on the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission, which is, again, it's an honor. There is a lot of really great work happening. I wanted to ask about three things that I didn't hear identified in the hazard kind of context. Resource contamination. So I know we didn't look at bad actors, but we had some years past a contamination in Spring Hollow with PFAS, which was just sort of like an upriver oopsie. And so thinking about how we
That's
do
a way of
better.
putting it.
I mean, a big oopsie, a very expensive big oopsie. But if something worse were to happen that were to contaminate any number of our drinking water sources, how do we think about and prepare for that? And then also, I wasn't sure at first, and sorry for not being better briefed if this was just natural disasters, but it sounds like we can look at man-made. And so I would just throw out there, I know we've been looking at this a little bit on the city level, but pipeline disasters is one area of concern for both our drinking water sources and then just knowing where they are and if they blow up, who would be in the danger zone. And then also similarly, railroad disasters. What should we be aware of as a locality that has railroad running through our city? And all of us, if you don't remember, you should check out the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio in 2023. The same chemicals that they had an issue with move, I believe, through our city on our rail lines. And so a lot of our neighborhoods are in worst case scenario fallout zones. So how do we prepare for that and think about that? And then lastly, I'm really glad to hear you mention air quality as something that was, I'll look at that. And just thinking about how do we keep our eye on that, because in the past we did have ozone non-attainment issues, which is, there are a lot of public health issues that obviously come with bad air quality, but it's also dings us on our economic development and can really hinder us on that front as well. And we're really close on some of our criteria pollutants, like particulate matter in particular. So as we continue to grow and we look at other big sources potentially coming to the area, things like data centers, stuff like that are huge emitters, I just wonder how we might in the future think about, and we can, I guess, discuss this in between now and when we adopt it, but those are just some things that jumped out at me that I think we should have on our radar as a council with regard to disasters. So thank you for that long comment.
Thank you. I do want to address the water supply comments. I mentioned the drought was covered under your state mandated water supply planning. So I just want to reiterate, we are in the process of updating the water supply plans for the region. And it's been a little bit of a slow process because of General Assembly funding issues, honestly. But that is something that is in process. So I expect there's an opportunity there to consider that item. The other items, this is a 5-year plan, so typically it requires a full revision and look at everything again at the 5-year planning window. We do kind of annual plan maintenance, but typically we would not do a big overhaul again until 5 years unless we had a request from a local government that was interested in that. So, thank you.
Other questions?
Mayor, I have a question.
Ms. Powers.
So thank you for doing this. It was very informative. I did read it all. And so I was like, wow, I learned a lot. So thank you. But I will tell you a question that I got. We were looking at it at homeowners insurance and, seeing where we should go. And it was interesting that the lady asked me if I knew if we had a plan. She knew that we had gas lines in our area, and she wanted to know if I knew how often they were updated. Of course, I didn't know. So I was happy to hear Councilman McGuire ask that, because they did ask me those questions about water lines and gas lines, and I didn't know. So it's interesting to know this. Is this information posted somewhere so that we could tell people where to go see this?
So the hazard mitigation plan, yes, will be posted publicly. It is currently on our Engage site, and it should also be on our website. If it is not now, it will be soon. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. At least now I can say, oh, well, I can tell you where to go see.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
you.
It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a couple follow-up questions. You talked Thanks for your explanation about all the different types of events that we are at risk for, particularly those we're at highest risk for. And you alluded to this, but I'm curious how the plan talks about combinations of these events. The reason I ask that is because we've had numerous combinations of events that have placed us at higher risk. I'll use, for example, you could take cold weather. This last storm, it was projecting that we would not only get snow and ice, but we would have below freezing temperatures, which we did for 2 weeks, which aggravated the snow removal and the impacts of the freezing temperatures. But we had high winds as well. Does this study look at the impacts of multiple, like combined events that might even place us at higher risk?
I would say not per se. There is some allusion to, uh, in some sections of the plan, possible combination events, and in some of the case studies, but each of the items is mostly taken individually in the risk model. Um, I would say that specific uh, vulnerability assessments for particular pieces of infrastructure tend to look more at those combination events. Yeah.
Another thing kind of relates to power outages as a result of some of these risks and events. I know there are parts of our city that, based on their location, are at higher risk for power outages and inconsistency in power, particularly where there's more density of trees, where there are lines in the trees. Does this plan help us look at how to minimize that impact in terms of like whether it's burying utility lines so that we don't run into that? And I know that's a long-term bigger issue, but does the plan look at any of that strategically?
Not, I would not say that it looks at that in the current iteration, unfortunately. One of the goals, I think, for the planning process in the future is better integration with the utility companies, power companies. Yeah.
The last question is, you talked a lot about how vulnerable we still are to flooding. And I know we've done a lot of work in the last 10 or 15 years to mitigate flooding. So in the dollar amounts that you were showing, are we seeing those claims trending down because of the mitigation work we've done? I realize based on dollars, a claim in 81 is different from a claim in 2026, dollar-wise, inflation-wise. But I am curious to know if at what level our flood mitigation work is making a difference, not only on the ground in reducing flooding, but overall in terms of the claims that are being made.
I would have to yield to your staff on that one, Mr. Cobb.
Just curious about that.
They have
And they may not know
I
today,
do
which
not,
is fine.
unfortunately, have the answer to
That's
that
okay.
today.
You've been great with everything. So.
Amanda, if I might. Mayor, we'll get you some specifics through Ms. Turner, but in general, the city has undertaken several repetitive lost property purchases. And so case in point would be the Ramada Inn that is very vulnerable, or was very vulnerable, and had repetitive losses. We have acquired that site, and there are future plans underway to actually have some floodplain restoration that will reduce risk to other properties in the city. And so we've done that throughout a number of locations through the city as those properties have been identified. Working through the FEMA program, we've received a lot of money to help with that. And so that has not been local taxpayer dollars that have paid for those purchases, but been federal money. And then the money to do the floodplain restorations come from a variety of sources, which has also been helpful and at a high dollar amount, either from federal or the state side. Those are all voluntary sales, meaning that those owners have to agree to relinquish that property, and then there is a relocation program that's part of that voluntary sale. So through those efforts, we are seeing some of the claims reduced because we're moving those high impact structures from our floodways.
Thank you very much. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. McGee and Mr. Campbell.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your presentation today. And this will be back before us on March 2nd for adoption. We will now move to our items recommended for action. And item A is appropriation of Virginia Department of Transportation or VDOT, funding for the Tinker Creek Greenway. There's one measure and ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
Thank you, council members Hagan and Volleson. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance appropriating funding for the local match of the Tinker Creek Greenway Project VDOT grant, amending and reordaining certain sections of the FY 25 through 26 Capital Projects Fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance. The city manager or designee is hereby authorized to accept, execute, and file on behalf of the city of Roanoke any and all documents required to accept and reallocate such funds. All such documents shall be approved as to form by the city attorney.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Any discussion by members of council? Ms. Turner, anything you'd like to add to this?
No, just that these are match funds that we're required to provide. You originally approved for the appropriation in November of last year.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? She's out. Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Item B is the execution of a naming, advertising, and sponsorship agreement for Roanoke Civic Center with Berglund Management Group Incorporated. We have one measure, a resolution, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Council members Volleson and Powers, and Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a naming, advertising, and sponsorship agreement with Berglund Management Group, Inc., and to take such actions as may be necessary to provide for the implementation, administration, and enforcement of such agreement.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, anything that you'd like to add to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item authorizes a new one-year naming rights agreement with Berglund Management Group to continue the Civic Center's designation as the Berglund Center with up to 2 additional one-year renewals by mutual agreement. And so that's the kind of the bulk of this.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that I see Robin Sean, what is your title, Robin? Are you general manager at the center? Yeah, thank you for being here today. If any questions by members of council? Well, I want to extend our thanks to the Berglund Management Group. They've been a longtime partner with the Civic Center, and the city have made extraordinary investments in the Berglund Center, and we're grateful for this continuing partnership with them. All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the resolution is adopted. Now I'll turn to Ms. Turner for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 5 comments, actually. Number 1, the skate park ribbon cutting was rescheduled for March 6th at 1:30 p.m. So that's Friday, March 6th at 1:30 p.m. Number 2, progress continues on the Gainsborough Hub Initiative. This week, residents met with the project leadership to discuss next steps for the proposed Gainsborough Community Stage. The project would establish an outdoor amphitheater adjacent to the Gainsborough Branch Library, creating a dedicated venue for cultural events, performances, and community gatherings. The design is intended to support neighborhood revitalization by providing a safe and accessible space for arts programming, educational activities, and public celebration. The initiative focuses on strengthening community engagement, supporting local talent, and positioning the library as a hub for cultural and social connection. Number 3, Burleigh Construction began replacing the timber deck of the MLK Bridge during the week of January 26. The rehabilitation plan replaces the original wooden walking surface with a precast concrete plank system. This new system closely matches the size, shape, and color of the existing timber decking. The upgrade improves structural durability and increases load capacity while also supporting operational needs such as snow removal, all without altering the bridge's historic appearance. Number 4. I have 3 personnel that I would like to kind of just highlight today. First and foremost, not first and foremost, but number 1 is Desi Winter. He joined us on December 15th. You've met him before, but I want to tell you a little bit more about his experience. He brings decades of experience in affordable housing development, housing policy, and community-centered redevelopment. He is a seasoned housing professional whose career has been dedicated to expanding access to safe, stable, and affordable homes. Prior to joining the city, Desi served with the Roanoke Redevelopment and Housing Authority, where he led and supported a wide range of complex initiatives. His work has included redevelopment of public housing communities, the development of new single-family homes, the construction of mixed-income housing communities, and the historic preservation of aging affordable housing properties. Desi has managed multiple multi-million-dollar mixed finance development projects and brings experience working with community development, block grant funding, housing tax credit, and affordable housing trust programs. And number 5, I'd also like to tell you a little bit more about Janelle Few, who is our Public Information Officer. She brings more than 30 years of distinguished experience in media and communications with a career that spans local government, federal government, and journalism. Her professional journey reflects not only depth of experience, but also a lifelong commitment to clear, transparent, and meaningful communication with the public. At the local level, she led the Public Information and Community Engagement Office for the City of Savannah Fire Department, where she played a critical role in ensuring timely communication, strengthening community trust, and fostering engagement between public safety officials and residents they serve. At the federal level, she served as press secretary for the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the U.S. government's international development agency. In this role, she represented a complex global initiative with clarity and professionalism, communicating America's development efforts to audience both at home and abroad. Before her work in government, Ms. Few built a remarkable 20-year career in journalism. As a newspaper reporter, she earned national and state awards, demonstrating not only her skill as a communicator, but also her commitment to accuracy, integrity, and public service. And lastly, it is my pleasure to announce to you today the appointment of Amber Lowry as the new Library Director of Roanoke City Public Libraries. Amber began her career with our library system in 2005, and she has dedicated more than 2 decades to serving the residents of Roanoke. She holds a communications degree from Virginia Tech and a master's in library sciences from Florida State University. For 15 years, Amber has served as the youth services manager, where she oversaw the system-wide programming, staff development, and service expansion across all branches. During that time, she helped launch and grow impactful initiatives such as Star City Reads, a nationally recognized early literacy effort, and Free and Read, a partnership addressing food insecurity among children in our community. Under her leadership, the summer reading program has continued to thrive, fostering the lifelong love of reading and learning for families throughout Roanoke. So it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Amber Lowry as our director.
Congratulations. So I know you have some of your team here today, and one of the great things about our libraries is the amazing team that we have. Would you like to introduce everybody you have with you today?
Absolutely. So we have Nathan Flinchum on the end, Lisa Bannister, Amanda Taylor, Charles C. Parker, and my husband, Richard Lowry. He manages the home side of me, which is a lot sometimes. So I appreciate your support. I look forward to stepping into this role as library director. And as a city employee who's been here for over 20 years, I know that we're going to continue to do amazing work supporting our community moving forward. And I appreciate each of you for the support that you've offered us over the years. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
So could we have the 3 colleagues that you introduced today come up?
Absolutely.
and join us for a photo. And Ms. Turner, if you could join us as well.
Sure.
Thank you. Now it's centered. Thank you.
You. Congratulations. Thank you, Ms. Turner, for all those updates. I'm just going to remind everyone again of the first one, which is the skate park. It's real. We're going to cut the ribbon on it on March 6th at 1:30 p.m. And when we're there, we'll also be able to see and ribbon cut the new pump track that's right next door to it. All right, next we have public matters follow-up, and I believe Ms. Hedrick is here to walk us through that. And council, I think everyone got a one sheet on that.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon, Mayor. Thank you. Vice Mayor, members of council, nice to see you this afternoon. Just a couple of items. The first is regarding Deborah Carter's comments regarding the response to a 911 call where a resident was later found deceased in the apartment. I spoke with the fire marshal's office, who has also been in touch with Ms. Carter. Fire EMS leadership has reviewed the incident, and because the original dispatch was for an unusual odor rather than a well-being check, the responding firefighters investigated by checking the complainant's plumbing, running water, and thoroughly assessing the surrounding area. The odor seemed to dissipate during the call, and at that time, officials observed no conditions that warranted forced entry into the neighboring apartment. So based on the information available to crews, established protocol was followed. We appreciate Ms. Carter's concerns and offer condolences to the family of the deceased resident. I also, as is typical when we have a Fair Free Day, I just wanted to bring back data of the results. Wednesday, February 4th was Fair Free Day to recognize Transit Equity Day, which is of course a tribute to Rosa Parks. And the intent of this day is to promote the accessibility of public transit and encourage new riders to experience the convenience of the system. So the numbers are provided for you there on your follow-up report, but Valley Metro saw 5,404 riders on this Fair Free Day. On a typical Wednesday, their average ridership is 4,832, and over the 7 days prior to Fair Free Day, the average was 3,829. So certainly an increase as a result of Fair Free Day. So we're always excited to see that that is encouraging folks to take advantage of our metro system and just see some of the things that we have to offer. And those are the only comments that I have for you this afternoon. Thank you.
Cedric, we appreciate the update and the follow-up. Item 2 on our regular agenda is the city attorney, and we have one item, the amendment of the city code, Article 10, transient occupancy tax, Chapter 32, taxation to align with recent changes to the Code of Virginia. During our last meeting, we did receive a briefing on this matter. Mr. Collins, who is here with us today, and I'm sure is available for any questions, right? That's correct. Thank you. We have one measure, an ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second on the ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second. Thank you, council members Volleson and Nash. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance amending and reordaining sections 32-239 definitions, 32-240 levied rate, 32-241 exceptions, 32-242 collection, 32-243 report and remittances, 32-244 failure to collect, report, or remit, 32-245 records to be kept, 32-248 powers and duties of Commissioner of Revenue under Article 10 transient occupancy tax, Chapter 32 Taxation Code of the City of Roanoke as amended by amending the aforementioned sections to align with changes made to the Code of Virginia for collection of the transient occupancy tax, providing for an effective date, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, anything from your office to add to this? All right, Mr. Collins, anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, Mayor Cobb.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Powers?
I just want to say thank you to Mr. Collins and to Mr. LaFountain and to Ms. Burkett. And I know y'all have done amazing work on this. We worked on this a little bit before I left, and we finally got it done. So thank y'all all very much for your incredible work on this.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb?
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Thank you all for your work on this. Item 8 is the reports of committees, and this is an opportunity where council members who serve as liaisons to authorities, boards, or committees can offer updates. Any reports? All right. Moving on to item 10, the introduction and consideration of ordinances and resolutions. We have an ordinance to adjust the salary of the city treasurer effective January 1, 2026. We have one measure and ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second on the ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Thank you, council members Hagan and Nash. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance authorizing an increase to the annual salary of an elected official for the city of Roanoke, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute any documents necessary for such increase, providing for an effective date of January 1st, 2026, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, anything to add to this?
No comments, thank you.
Okay. I think council all received the request from the treasurer, and this brings that position into alignment with the commissioner of the revenue. A portion of this is covered through the state, and then we also have a portion. All right, any discussion or questions by members of council? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Item 11 is motions and miscellaneous business. Any additional inquiries or comments by members of council? We have no vacancies or appointments to make today, so we will be in recess for closed meetings and reconvene this evening at 7 p.m. in council chamber.